Why did the Cleveland Guardians seem to have limited funds this offseason? We all thought it was because of the TV contract or the changes in the TV contract. And it looks like we were right, but maybe not in the way we thought. With all the people there adding to the broadcast, maybe that's where the money went this offseason.
Tanner Bagby of the Guardians, and you're listening to Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show today. I want to thank you for joining us. On today's show, we are going to talk about the TV announcements. We have a lot of information, not all of it, but we have a lot of information to discuss when it comes to that. We have two minor additions, and I do mean that. They're literally minor league contracts who have been added to the team. There's a few news and notes around the league I got to talk about. And if we have some time talking about prospects at the end, Everyday David is the only one who commented about wanting something to do with MLB draft history. So I think we're just going to shove that to the side. If there's no interest, I'm not going to do it. It's just the way of it. For those who do not know me, I am Jeff Ellis, the OG host. There have been 4 hosts in the history of this podcast. And I've been there since the beginning. Before that, I was a lead draft and prospect analyst at Scout and 24/7. Let's just get into it. Okay, so the TV announcement. The one we knew Jensen Lewis wasn't coming back. They're keeping pretty much the entire grouping beyond that. Al Pulaski, Matt Underwood, Rick Manning, Andre Knott, the people you are very used to. Chris Jimenez, who was part of it last year as well. Now, I could be wrong in this, but I don't really remember this next group of people being part of it. And the interesting thing, too, I want to point out is it's a lot of these people are for pre and post game. The Guardians didn't say this in a direct tweet, but they said it in a response tweet. There's only going to be pregame for home games. There will be no pregame show for road games. So this is a lot of people for less opportunities this year. But in case you missed it, bringing back Cody Allen, bringing in Nick Goody. Nick Goody and Austin Jackson are kind of the guys that kind of surprised me on this a little bit. I just, it kind of short runs with the team. Great, not necessarily my type of music, but famous, somewhat famous musician, Brendan Broussard as well. And then, the big name in all of this is Jason Kipnis coming in to do pre and post game for the team. I don't watch a lot of the Cavs just because of me being out of market, which we'll talk a little bit about in and out of market. But the backup for Andre Knott this year is Kylie Griffin, who, when I looked online, appears to be someone who does a lot of Cavs broadcast. But this is a lot of people. That's why I had to joke about the fact that it feels like they are spending here. It's interesting, the sheer number of people here. A lot going on, and it's all based on MLB. Let's be very honest about that. The MLB is who's going to be paying all of these people. I mean, the Guardians are probably okay. So it's through the MLB contract, and we have so much to discuss with that as well. A lot of changeover. I don't know if people caught it or not. We should probably comment here on the show that Mandy Bell announced she's leaving covering the Guardians. That they're going to be out there looking for someone else to be the MLB.com reporter. And good for her. She wants to do something she's very passionate about. So, to each of their own. She's been covering the Guardians for 6 years, but she's going to switch over to youth sports, I believe. And then at least for spring training for now, since they don't have anyone to lining up to take over that gig as it is, Anthony Castrovince, who I believe, was the guy before it became Jordan Bastian. And then I'm trying to remember if Bastian handed it off to Meisel or if Meisel was just over at the Plain Dealer. Either way, went to Bell and now to go to someone else. It'll be interesting. Castrovince is he's not really been focused on Cleveland. He's had some stuff through the years where I'm like, no, that's not a I enjoy him, but definitely some of his analysis has not been I remember him, writing about Lane Thomas's failures when he was performing well, talking about the worst trades at the deadline. I'm like, well, that was a little bit ago where that would have applied. But it just wasn't the case. So I'm hoping that I'm hoping we'll get someone in that role. Not me. I don't have any interest, but hey, maybe Justin. Can we start a thing to get Justin to take over that role? I think that would be fun. But to get back to the main part of this discussion, ADD moment there as I went on my little side. One, for me, like I said, it's Nick Goody was fine. Had some ups and downs here. Austin Jackson had one really strong year. Kipnis, Brassard, and Allen are really fun. Like that's a really fun grouping to me. Even though Brassard's run here, wasn't he was part of one of the best platoons this team ever had at first base. And then I'm trying to remember, I believe Brassard was the Asdrubal Cabrera part and Eduardo Perez was the Shin-Chu Chu part. And then Ben Brassard, of course, they got him by trading Russell Branyan on the other side. Cody Allen, one of the best relievers this organization's had. It's a lot of people. It's just interesting that they're expanding so much. For those who don't know about Jensen Lewis, he took like a full-time job somewhere else. So he moved on. I think they'll probably be better off with this current grouping. So yeah, I thought Jimenez brought more than Lewis did last year when they had them both there. And I'm sure he saw writing on the wall as well. It's a lot of people. I just, like I said, my only thing is like, how are you going to have this many voices? How big is the pre and post game show is going to be? And again, they said they're only going to do pregame for home games. So that's also interesting. Now, if you're curious about the monetary side of it, it is a little bit different than the Twins. If you're me, like I live out of market, I get MLB TV free through T-Mobile every year. I'm not going to buy this because it doesn't give me anything. It's $99.99, or you can do for like $200 essentially all of it, which is MLB TV plus that. Now, if you are in market, it's $99.99 to get rid of all local blackouts. I mean, if I was, or even someone like me, I could watch them and if I didn't, it's like with MLB TV, it's like normally $150. I don't really watch a lot of other teams. I use it for the minor league component, and they didn't really get into the weeds on that. So I don't know if theirs would come with the free minor league or if you need it for the other one. But like the minor league component is nice with the main one. But if I didn't get what I get, like I would buy this over the major league one because I don't know. I feel like 50 extra bucks isn't worth it for what I'm getting now. Having said that, when Cleveland came to Milwaukee, they would still be blacked out for me. Like that would still be a blackout because that is a local blackout restriction. But everyone else I'd be able to watch. So if you're like, how does this work for me? If you live in Cleveland, there should be no blackouts. You just shouldn't have any. You don't have to worry about it. You pay your $100, you get all the games. If you are out of market, it was interesting. They kept mentioning Seattle in particular in their responses. They were very focused on that. But if you live in Seattle, when they face the Mariners, those would be blacked out because those are blackout restriction games. But everything else, so MLB TV is $150 for the year. You're getting the Cleveland one for $99.99. How are they going to make money off of this? We've talked about that. Like, it's not great for money. That's why almost everyone who the new Bally's was willing to take back crawled back because the money was better there. MLB TV is still negotiating how this is going to appear on things like YouTube and cable. It's going to be a like CLEG, I believe, or maybe CLEB. It's going to be its own channel, which I don't know what they're going to run when there isn't a game on, especially if they're not doing like, pregame all the time. It's going to be a little bit different, a little bit interesting, but it should be a channel on network and cable, but they're still negotiating all of that. They say that you will have more information as it gets closer. So they'll get some money from that. You get money from licensing deals. They'll get money from commercials. They can sell commercials during this broadcast because it's going to be locally based. They'll get money from subscriptions, but I honestly feel like the subscription money is not going to be as valuable as the licensing agreements and the advertising. But the advertising is going to be based off of how many people they get. So it's kind of I don't know if I want to say a vicious circle, but it is a circle. But I really like their talent lineup. Maybe there will be more content just because the number of people they're having. It might be more like content that is based off the city and not so much these people being travel. But, for $100 a year, if you're in market, you're getting all the games. That's not a bad deal. That is, less than $1 a game. If you're paying for cable specifically to get sports, then during the summer, you don't need to pay for cable. This will pay for itself in like a month because the cable is so ridiculously expensive. Yeah, you just have to kind of make that choice or decision for you, but it is what we expected. It is the $99.99 a month for all the games non-blacked out in the Cleveland market. If you travel somewhere and Cleveland is on the road where you are, then that will be blacked out. That is, they say no blackouts ever, but there are local blackouts are what are gone. The cable side of it, I know a lot of people want to know more. There just isn't more to know right now. Once we know more, we will see what happens. It is going to be that, that's going to be a big divide, interesting thing to look at. They are, I believe the Twins had a slightly better deal if you did MLB TV and the local broadcast. Cleveland, it's $200 if you want both, which is $50 more than the cost of just MLB TV. So you're getting like half off the Guardians deal if you do that. And it's, they're part of a grand experiment this year. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm curious about numbers. Comment below if you're going to buy it. I'm kind of curious to see how many people are going to do this. Are you waiting to see what happens with cable? Or are you just going to do the MLB the MLB whole TV package? And then I wonder, like, if you're doing that, does Cleveland not benefit as much? And that's part of the problem, right? Like, for a lot of people, $15 more might be worth it if that gets you minor league games, if that gets you every team. If you just don't have to throw on and watch baseball at any time, like, there's a lot of value for paying $50 more, and that's going to affect the Guardians as well. They're kind of competing with themselves, which is weird. But yeah, it's fun to look at. It's fun to talk about. If you have further questions, put them below. I'm going to come back from break. I'm going to try to do one succinct put together about all of it, everything I know. I've done my rambling. And we're going to talk about the most minorest of additions on today's Locked On Guardians. Are you looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. I'm a big pistachio fan. Like most things, I like it. Maybe Justin isn't the biggest fan, so you'll be hearing me do a lot of our reads for them. But yeah, I mean, they're just a delicious taste. Like, there's a reason why, like, you can get pistachio pretty much everything, because everyone loves pistachios. And on top of that, they are a fantastic source of protein. So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. So, trying to do this succinctly, not my skill set, let's be honest. Succinctly doing things and pronunciations. I know my weaknesses. It's going to be $99.99, not counting, service charges, taxes, and all that stuff. If you live in market, it's all the games, no blackouts. If you go someplace else while the team is in town, it can be a blackout, but it is no local blackouts. This is not all of MLB TV. It is just the Guardians and all of their games, but this is the only way to do it right now with no local blackouts. They've added a lot of fun names. Specifically, I think Cody Allen and Jason Kipnis stand out the most to me in terms of their broadcast. There's going to be no pregame on the road, only at home, and they are still working out the details with cable. I think that's all of it, right? That is the specifics. That is mostly what I see, in here. There is a 7-day free trial, so you can wait till the season goes and see what it's like. Yeah, it's nice to get some information, right? Like, it's one of those things. I'll save this for the around the league. I want to get back to there. Cleveland has a rich history. You can go back and listen to a show I did, I believe last year, maybe it was 2 years ago, but I think it was last year, about Cleveland and its rich history with, African-American talent and being such a progressive baseball city. And the Cleveland Guardians have been doing a celebration of Black History Month, looking at some of their Negro League players that left their mark. And today's was Minnie Minoso. Segment 3, I'm going to talk about how Cleveland, in a way, lost the Minnie Minoso trade 3 separate times. They managed to have a Hall of Famer twice and lose a trade 3 times. But before that, let's talk about the minorest of minor league additions. Players who it's a little sacrilegious to follow up talking about Minnie Minoso with said players. But we have one formal announcement from the team and one that was not announced by the team, but was announced by a college about a signing. So let's talk about Cameron, Barstad, who was announced today. 6th round pick in 2018 by the Miami Marlins. Junipero Serra High School. Guess below, who is the only player the Guardians, back then they were the Indians, have drafted out of Junipero Serra High School. This is in San Mateo. It is a powerhouse for baseball. They've had players who've come out of that program from the college ranks, but they've only drafted one player from that program who became depending on your age, was a pretty big prospect at one point in time. That is my hint. You always need more catching depth in spring training. This is a player who has struggled he's been fine in the minor leagues hitting as an older player, as more of a backup, and that's what they did. They went out and got themselves some catching depth here. They needed catching depth. They found more catching depth. That's why Justin at various points thought like they would select someone maybe in the Rule 5. Instead, they brought back Dom Nunez. They added Barstad, though. They did enough side stuff to give them the catching depth they need, because you want like 3 catchers at most minor league levels. And then the other player that has not been formally announced, but was brought up by Ball State College, was Mike Hallquist, who was undrafted this past year. And it's kind of interesting on multiple levels, because typically you don't see guys announced this late. Like when we hear about a player signing, might be right after the end of the season. It might be we've seen a few guys like kind of around the new year, but this is now. And the other interesting thing is I believe he set the Ball State home run record this past year. I understand every school pretty much set a home run record. But the other reasons that stand out for this particular player, on top of the fact that he hit a whole mess of home runs, is that he K'd at a decent percentage. 22% is high. He had a big K to walk imbalance, didn't really walk. They didn't see him on the Cape because he never got a chance to play there, because he played in the Northwoods League with the Duluth Huskies, and in 2023 absolutely destroyed the Northwoods League. 15 home runs in 57 games, a 335 average, 456 on base, a 659 slugging. And this is the second best wood bat league. So, that is quite a performance that he put on there, before his senior season. And he only had the 1 year at Ball State and was good. Now, talked about something they kind of seem to go for, or these guys who bounce around. He was at Bismarck State College for 2 years, then Minnesota Crookston, which I was not familiar with, I have to be honest, Ball State, and then he played independent ball this past year, and it was just okay with the Fargo Motorhead Redhawks. But, his year at Ball State, if you're curious, 331, 396, 674, 21 home runs. He kept hitting baseballs very hard. 5'10", not the biggest guy. And when there's not a whole lot of data on him. I was trying to go through and see what I could find to see if maybe there's something more to it. But when you're looking at a guy who kind of goes against their type, is an unusual signing period, but does have some things they like someone who is, there's reasons why he maybe, is the reasons he went undrafted is because he only had the 1 year at a MAC. He's an older player. He's already 23. He's not the biggest kid. Maybe didn't have the best eyes. Even the MAC had a lot of advanced batted ball data. Maybe his didn't stand out. Maybe it did. I don't know. But he is a player who has performed. Like I said, the Northwoods is a good league. It's not the Cape Cod. Don't get me wrong. But it's still a good league. And he put up video game numbers there. He performed really well at Ball State. And that Ball State program is a very good program. Now, did I watch him a lot? No. I wish I had seen him more so I could give you more of a full-on scouting report. Because the other part is the MAC. outside of Friday starters and occasional Saturday starter, you're feasting on a lot of guys who are more like 80-mile-an-hour fastballs. And that's why there's a lot of guys who can perform really well in the MAC and never get drafted. Like I remember going to see Youngstown State versus Kent State. And there was a first baseman I'm blanking on who had an unreal amount of home runs. And I remember it was like his family was there, and it was very clear his agent came to talk to him. And, I think there was some real hope that this kid was going to, and he ended up going undrafted. And that's not, Youngstown State is the MAC, but it's hard to get recognized in the MAC when you're a hitter. You're facing a lot of lesser competition. You kind of have to do things over multiple years. I'm currently, having a brain cramp, so I can't think of, the third baseman from Miami that I talked about multiple times over the course of the show, who I believe transferred to University of Georgia. It's good for him to get that opportunity. But yeah, I'm all for adding interesting players. Hey, we need more home runs, right? And the other thing is we talked about how they like left-handed bats. Hallquist is a right-hander. So yeah, I mean, chances of him making impact are very, very low. These are the minorest of moves. But, I think it's worth pointing out any additions they make at this point in time and why they go out and make said additions. We're going to come back, break number 3, and we'll talk about the Minnie Minoso trades, give a little historical piece. Please keep listening, even though I'm going to talk history, as well as we got to talk about the Twins signing just because of, I don't know if I want to say the humor of it, but just the discrepancy in talent on today's Locked On Guardians. So let's first talk about the Twins, and then we'll talk about Minnie Minoso. The Twins added Ty France today. The drop from Carlos Santana to Ty France is really something. I know he's probably not going to be counted on to be their starter at first base. They've made some other moves. They have some other players who could go in there. I liked Ty France quite a bit a few years ago. There was a point in time when I thought, like, man, getting Munoz and France was highway robbery for the Mariners. Like, that was one of the deals that helped build that team. I was trying to figure out what went wrong for Ty France. And what I've come to the conclusion is, like everything, I've never seen a player who has less consistency in their launch angle for an entire career. He took the complete wrong approach last year and started pulling less and going opposite field more. We know that's not a good thing. I mean, maybe the Twins could fix him. Like, there are some signs in there, so maybe he can bounce back. Maybe this will be good for the Twins. But I had to comment because the Twins, haven't done much, right? Like, they went out and added Danny Colom and Harrison Bader, and now they've added Ty France. Not ideal. So for all the complaining about Cleveland, it's like I also say it is the bonus humor of talk was Carlos Santana, who was with the Twins, was going to go to the Mariners. Instead, he comes to Cleveland after they make the Naylor trade. So Seattle has to settle for Polanco, who's a former Twin. And then the Twins end up having to, in this game of musical chairs, settle for Ty France, the former Mariner. So just this little interesting pattern of names and who is ending up on what teams. And at the end of the day, again, I'll point out Cleveland was battling the Twins potentially for the division and could be, depending on how things work out in what should be a tough division, could be battling the Mariners for a wild card spot. Making that trade they did and signing Carlos Santana made 2 other teams weaker. So there's some additional value. It's not just what Carlos Santana does for you. It's also, if Slade Ciccone helps his team this year, but additionally, like what Carlos Santana will not be doing for the Mariners. And, if the Mariners sign Santana, maybe Polanco goes back to the Twins, who is better than France. So you're looking at potentially 2 teams that are negatively affected. So that's one of those things we don't always talk about, don't always look at, but I think it is worth mentioning. Don't go away, please. I'm going to talk some history. Please stay. For whatever reason, people don't stay for history. Minnie Minoso, many people, most people think of him as a White Sox, 13-time All-Star, won a World Series, 3-time Gold Glover. Cleveland had a choice to make back in 51, and unfortunately, they made the wrong choice. You kind of wish they had advanced stats because maybe then they could have seen what was the correct choice to make. they had Harry Simpson and they had Minnie Minoso, and they had to choose which guy to go with. And Simpson was good in the Negro Leagues. Minoso was better. He played for the New York Cubans out there, and he was kind of stuck, like mired in Cleveland's minor leagues. I mean, he didn't really get a full opportunity to his 27 years of age. Yes, some of that is from, Cleveland didn't sign him until 49, but it's also they just didn't have a great spot for him. Like that was the unfortunate situation. And the White Sox acquired him, and he finished 4th in the MVP, 2nd in the Rookie of the Year, and was an all-star. Also, how crazy is it that you're 2nd in the Rookie of the Year and 4th in the MVP? Second to Gil McDougald with the Yankees, and I don't even know who that is. Maybe I'm showing my bias here. The people who beat him, Ali Reynolds, wasn't he the big chief who the Cleveland traded? Ned Garver and Yogi Berra. So, and Gil McDougald was a 40-win player, so that is me showing my lack of knowledge. Yeah, Reynolds was with Cleveland. So Cleveland makes this trade, and all you can do is kind of laugh. They had Larry Doby and Dale Mitchell set in 2 of their outfield spots. Kennedy and Simpson got most of the at-bats in the final spot there, and so they don't really have a spot, and they decide to go Simpson. Simpson ends up being a light-hitting guy who doesn't really nail down the outfield spot for them, and then they need an outfielder. Number one, well, that's Ken Griffey Sr. is his similarity score, but Cleveland ships him and other pieces away in a 3-team deal back in 1951 to get Lou Brissy from the Philadelphia Athletics, who they needed pitching, and Brissy was done. They get him. They also sent Ray Murray and Sam Zoldyck out in that deal. Brissy was not good for Cleveland, so they lose this deal because they trade a Hall of Famer. Excuse me, and Sam Zoldyck. He was kind of done too, but he actually was better than Lou Brissy was for Cleveland. So they traded the best pitcher and far and away the best player for one guy. So that's the first time it stings. 6 years later, they get him back. And the reason it's a loss this time, even though he's a very good player who'd play more years, is Al Smith was a solid outfielder, and Early Wynn was still a very good pitcher. Like, Early Wynn was one of the reasons this team had that great 53 season, had those other great seasons. When he came over from Washington, that was a huge deal. And I get why Cleveland thought, hey, he's 37, ship him out. He would pitch through age 43. The next 2 years in Chicago, he'd be an all-star twice and win the Cy Young for the White Sox. Sorry, an all-star 3 more times. Not ideal. Minoso was great in Cleveland, but they traded away 2 useful players for one. 2 years later, they trade away Minnie Minoso, and they could have actually won this deal because they get John Romano was a good player for them, and they get Norm Cash. Now, the reason they end up a loser is because, unfortunately, they did not keep Norm Cash. Norm Cash, who would be worth 52 WAR for his career. Cleveland, let's see, they shipped out Cash at that time. I'm trying to remember. Luke Easter, I know, was no longer the first baseman just because he's already an older player. Cleveland trades kind of the funny bit is, people always talked about Derek Dietrich and wanting him to come because he was a local kid. Steve Detmer, I believe, was who they got back for Norm Cash, and that is Derek Dietrich's grandfather. Norm Cash would go on to, be a staple on the great Detroit teams in the 60s and 70s. So they could have finally turned that trade around, but instead they took the best player in that deal and traded him for a guy who I don't even think played in the big leagues, just to really rub that in. I'll just double check that. So I thought, with Cleveland honoring Minoso today, and with outside of TV, there not being a whole lot of news, I thought it was worth talking about. Okay, Detmer did make it to the big leagues with Cleveland. He played 4 games and had 5 plate appearances for, a multi-time All-Star and a batting champ. This is why this team was so bad in the 60s and 70s. Was trading multiple Hall of Famers at various points and somehow always being on the losing end of those deals. It's for as much as we complain, I will say the one thing is I know people don't love history, but the history of this organization is such that, talk to people older than you. Realize that it is truly a golden age of Cleveland baseball. We get to have these first world problems of complaining when the team makes the ALCS, when for 20 years they couldn't even sniff the playoffs. Heck, they couldn't sniff 500 for most of that time. It was, it was a time. And, is it annoying now? Is it frustrating? Absolutely. And I understand everyone's annoyance and frustration. But I think that you always want to, sometimes take that time back, take 2 steps back, and kind of realize that it's frustrating because they're successful and we wish they could just, sorry, I cut all the other costs. It's frustrating because of the success, because they haven't ascended the mountain and they've been close. But we're also the spoiled fans who get to have a team that's been close to ascending the mountain multiple times in, the last few years. There's not a Colorado Rockies fan alive who wouldn't trade with us. There's multiple fan bases who hope to aspire to what Cleveland has become. And I hope to aspire to you watching the show. I hope you enjoyed the show. I appreciate all of our everydayers. Like I said, I mentioned David at the start. You know what? I got a little time here, so I thought I would pull up on the YouTube Studio app. It tells me very specifically when I look at community, here are the people who are community spotlight. John Fagan, Kayleen, Ryan Dadzaki, Karzai One, and Lawrence Charles are our most engaged audience members, including our top commenters. So that is directly from the YouTube. Those are our top commenters on there. Ryan and John both at 100+. So there's the 2 to beat. Justin will be doing a solo show next. So we're going to do some off and on with this, as there's not as much to talk about. I'm just going to shift because I know people like cats, and I've got the cat right here just kind of loudly deciding to purr on mic. But yeah, Justin will be back for a solo show, and then we're going to get together to talk. College baseball starts this weekend, so there'll be some fun things to discuss there as well as pitchers and catchings, and I'm sure pitchers and catchers as well. Man, I'm falling apart at the end. It's what happens when you talk for 30 minutes straight. But as well as there's going to be more non-roster invitees. We'll find out. There's going to be more minor league signings. We're going to discuss it all. When we have news, we're going to dive in, just like I did with the TV announcement. Thank you all. I really appreciate all of the support you've given us. I can remember when we were lucky to get 100 downloads per episode, and now I feel bad when we don't get 1,000 YouTube watches, let alone plus another multiple thousand on the downloads. So thank you. I need to take steps back myself and appreciate our fantastic fans. So thank you. Tell me what else you would like me to talk about. And if you're a history person, please watch it multiple times. Comment below. I know some of you want more. I did it. Please don't die as an episode because I dared talk history. Thank you. And go Guardians, go.